Sarah Evans pushed her shopping cart slowly through the produce section of the supermarket. Inside the cart was a head of lettuce, a bag of potatoes, a carton of discounted eggs, and a small package of steak. She stood in front of the meat cooler, picked up the steak, checked the price, and quietly put it back. She swapped it for a cheaper pack of chicken breasts. Beside her, a young girl was on the phone with her boyfriend, her voice sweet and playful. "What do you want for dinner tonight, babe? I will make it for you." Sarah heard it. Her fingers paused on the plastic wrapping, and she froze for a moment. She had not asked that question in a very long time. Exactly 9 years. 9 years ago, her husband, Mark Evans, was sent by his company on an overseas infrastructure project to Saudi Arabia. He said he would be back in 3 years. At that time, their daughter, Lily, had just turned 2. She could not even say daddy properly, only mumbling a soft dad. The day Mark left, Sarah held the baby and dropped him off at the airport. Lily fell asleep on his shoulder. Mark held a large suitcase, wearing a gray jacket, his face showing an excited yet reluctant smile. He said, "Sarah, when I get back, we will buy a bigger house with a yard. Do not work too hard. The overseas pay is great. Give me 3 years, and our lives will be so much better." Sarah was only 27 back then. She believed his words, and she wanted to believe them. She stood outside the terminal, watching his terminal gates close, holding back her tears for a long time before they finally fell. When Lily woke up, she cried for her dad. Sarah coaxed the child, saying, "Daddy went to a place very far away to make money. He will be back soon." She repeated the word soon for 9 years. For the first 3 years, Mark did call home often. The signal there was unstable, and the calls were always filled with static and the sound of wind. He said the project was busy, the desert heat was unbearable, and he missed American food. The construction site was far from any town, and sometimes he would not see an outsider for a whole month. Sarah's heart ached every time she listened. She told him to take care of his health and not to be too cheap to buy good food. Mark always laughed. "I am a grown man, why are you worrying so much? Just take good care of Lily and yourself, that is all that matters." Back then, at the end of every month, he would wire money home. Though it was not a fortune, it was enough to cover the mortgage, baby formula, and daily expenses. Sarah worked at a local independent bookstore during the day and took care of her daughter at night. Life was a bit tough, but she had hope. Hope for her husband to return, hope for their family of 3 to be reunited. But starting in the 4th year, the phone calls became less frequent. Mark said the company changed the project location, making communication even harder. The money transfers also changed from once a month to once every 2 or 3 months, with the amounts fluctuating. He explained that payroll over there was unstable and sometimes they had to wait for contractor settlements. Sarah was not without her doubts, but she did not understand the business of overseas contracting, nor did she have any contact with Mark's company. When Mark left, all the paperwork was handled centrally by his employer. She only knew he went abroad with Apex Engineering. As for the specific country or site, she could only rely on the brief mentions he made over the phone. She asked him, "When are you coming back?" "It has been over 3 years. Mark went silent for a while, then said, "Sarah, wait a little longer. They renewed my contract. The company says 2 more years at most. If I come back now, all my previous hard work will be for nothing." Holding the phone, Sarah felt a heavy ache in her chest, but she still said, "Okay, I will wait for you." In the 5th year, Lily started elementary school. On registration day, the teacher asked for the father's occupation. Sarah wrote down engineering technician. The teacher then asked if the child's father was not coming. Sarah smiled faintly and said he was working out of state and could not make it. She did not say he was abroad, because every time she did, people would look surprised and ask, "Oh wow, so you have been raising the kid alone all these years? How often does he visit?" She did not know how to answer. Not even once. In 9 years, Mark never came home once. Either he was too busy with the project during the holidays, or there were visa issues, or flights were too expensive, or he was not feeling well and could not handle the travel, or the company gave him an emergency assignment. Every single excuse sounded real. Sarah had been angry. She had cried on the phone, questioning him. "Other people working abroad get to go home. Why can you not come back even once? Do you just not want to come back?" Mark sounded desperate. "How can you think that? I am out here braving the elements. Is it not all for you and our child? You think I do not miss home? But if I leave, I lose my position here, and I lose the money. What do you expect me to do?" That night, Sarah cried until dawn. The next day, she woke up as usual, made breakfast for Lily, ironed her clothes, dropped her off at school, and went to work at the bookstore. Life does not stop just because you feel wronged. Lily grew up day by day, transforming from a little girl in kindergarten to a middle schooler who could tie her own ponytail and wash the dishes for her mom. In her memory, her dad was always someone who existed only in photographs and phone calls. The Mark in the pictures was young, with handsome features and a kind, honest smile. But the Mark on the phone grew increasingly like a stranger. Sometimes Lily wanted to talk to her dad, but he was always in a rush. He would quickly ask how school was going, and before she could answer, he would say the signal was bad and that they would chat next time. When Lily was little, she would hold the phone and cry, "Daddy, when are you coming back to see me?" Mark would say, "When you get straight A's, Daddy will come back." Later, Lily actually did get straight A's. Sarah took a picture of her report card and sent it to him. He only replied with 4 words. "Great job. Keep going." Eventually, Lily stopped asking. Sarah also stopped forcing her to talk to her dad on the phone. The mother and daughter lived their lives like walking down a narrow alley, moving forward slowly. They lived in an old apartment building on the 3rd floor. The hallway light was often broken, the windows let in the cold winter draft, and the walls got damp in the summer. Every time a neighbor renovated and moved out, Sarah would think of Mark's promise from years ago, a bigger house with a yard. The house never changed, but the debts piled up. In the 6th year, Mark suddenly said he invested in a small side project, and his cash flow was temporarily stuck. He asked Sarah to take out their savings for an emergency. Sarah was worried. She asked if this was a company requirement and if there were any contracts. Mark said, "How can you still not trust me? Would I scam my own family? If this project works out, I will get a huge payout. Then I will come back to the States." The words "come back" felt like a needle, gently piercing Sarah's heart. She transferred the $8,000 she had saved over the years to him. That was money she scraped together by living frugally. When Lily was sick as a toddler, Sarah refused to take a cab, carrying her daughter to her old, unreliable car to drive to the hospital. She never bought new clothes for the holidays and only bought marked-down groceries right before the store closed. After sending the money, she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, feeling empty inside, yet she comforted herself. It will be fine once he comes back. But he never came back. In the 7th year, he said the project ran into trouble, and the money could not be withdrawn. In the 8th year, he said the project was extended, and he could not break the contract. In the 9th year, he said he was not feeling well, needed to recover over there, and could not handle the long flight. Listening to him, Sarah's heart no longer hurt the way it did in the beginning. When you hurt for too long, you go numb. She no longer waited eagerly for his calls every night like she did when she was younger. She no longer looked forward to every holiday. She merely reminded Mark on Lily's birthday every year to call home, even just to say happy birthday. Sometimes he remembered, sometimes he forgot. On Lily's 13th birthday, he forgot. That night, after blowing out her candles at the dining table, Lily asked, "Mom, does Dad not love us anymore?" Sarah's fork paused. It took her a long time to reply. "Stop overthinking. He is just too busy." Lily looked down and smiled, a smile that did not belong on a child's face. Busy. For 9 years. Sarah did not speak again. She knew she could not even convince herself with that excuse anymore. It was a Friday. The supermarket was crowded. Sarah came right after her shift at the bookstore, wanting to buy some groceries to cook for Lily. Lily had just started her freshman year of high school and always came home hungry after track practice. Sarah wanted to make a warm soup. She pushed her cart toward the condiment aisle. Just as she picked up a bottle of soy sauce, she heard a hesitant voice behind her. "Sarah?" She froze, turning around. Standing a few feet away was a middle-aged man in a dark blue puffer jacket, holding a loaf of bread, looking at her with an uncertain expression. Sarah stared at him for a few seconds before remembering. "You are David Miller." The man's eyes lit up. "Yes, exactly, it is me, David. Wow, it really is you. I was worried I got the wrong person." Sarah was quite surprised. David was an old colleague of Mark's. They both worked at Apex Engineering. The year Mark went overseas, David was on the same assignment list. Sarah remembered that on the day they left, David brought his wife along to see them off, and everyone exchanged numbers. But over time, they lost contact. David looked older than she remembered, with thinning hair and wrinkles around his eyes, but his demeanor was still cheerful. "How have you been all these years?" David asked. "Lily must be all grown up now, right?" Sarah smiled. "She just started high school." "Man, time flies," David sighed. "My boy is in high school too. Drives me crazy every day." They exchanged a few pleasantries. Sarah initially just wanted to chat briefly and leave, but David suddenly looked around and asked, "Where is Mark? He is not with you?" Sarah's heart sank, but her face remained calm. "He is still working overseas. He has not come back." The bread bag in David's hand suddenly twitched. He looked at Sarah as if he did not understand. Overseas? Which overseas? Sarah offered a bitter smile. Where else could he be? The project in Saudi Arabia. He has not come back in all these years. David's face changed instantly. He stood frozen in place, his eyes wide. His lips moved, but no words came out. Seeing his reaction, Sarah felt a sudden, inexplicable panic. What is wrong? David looked as if something was caught in his throat. It took him a long while to whisper, "That is not right." "What is not right?" Sarah asked. David looked at her, his expression so complex it was unsettling. "You are telling me Mark has not been home for 9 years?" Sarah gripped the handle of her shopping cart. "Yes. He always tells me he is working on the infrastructure project in Saudi Arabia." David's face turned stark white. He glanced around as if afraid someone might hear, and lowered his voice. "Sarah, are you mistaken? Mark came back to the States 7 years ago." In that split second, all the noise in the supermarket seemed to be violently sucked away. The promotional announcements, the crying babies, the beeping of the barcode scanners at the register, everything sounded terribly distant. Sarah stood rooted to the ground, her fingers turning ice cold. She looked at David as if looking at a stranger. "What did you say?" David swallowed hard. "I said Mark came back 7 years ago. When the first phase of our project ended back then, a lot of us came back. He actually left a few days before I did. I remember it clearly because we even had a welcome back dinner together. He said he wanted to rest for a while after returning." A loud ringing filled Sarah's ears. She had to hold on to the shopping cart to keep herself from collapsing. "Are you sure you are not remembering it wrong?" Her voice trembled. "He has been calling me all these years, saying he is abroad, saying the project never ended, saying he cannot come back." David showed an expression of absolute disbelief. "How could I remember it wrong? After we came back that year, the company threw a wrap-up party for us. Mark did not stay long before he quit. I heard he went to work for another company. I always assumed you guys moved back to Dayton together." "Quit." Sarah repeated the word, her lips completely dry. "Yeah," David frowned. "He never told you?" Sarah shook her head. She could not utter a single syllable. Seeing her pale face, David quickly added, "Sarah, please do not panic. Maybe there is some kind of misunderstanding. Give him a call and ask him." Sarah stiffly pulled out her phone. She could dial Mark's number with her eyes closed. She hit send. The phone rang for a long time, but nobody answered. She dialed a second time. Still no answer. On the third try, the cold automated voice answered. "The subscriber you have dialed is currently unavailable." Sarah gripped her phone, her hands shaking violently. David stood next to her, looking awkward and highly sympathetic. He probably realized that his one sentence had just blown the lid off a secret buried for 7 years. "Sarah, maybe you should go home and calm down first," David said. "I will give you my number. I am still in touch with some of the old guys from the company. If you want to dig into this, I can ask around for you." Sarah nodded mechanically. David wrote down his number and handed it to her. She put the slip of paper in her purse and pushed the cart toward the checkout. While waiting in line, she saw the pack of chicken breasts in the cart and suddenly remembered she was supposed to make soup for Lily. But right now, she almost forgot how to pay. The cashier had to remind her, "Ma'am, are you paying with a card or cash?" Sarah blinked, then handed over her phone for Apple Pay. The wind was biting cold on the walk home. She carried 2 bags of groceries, walking very slowly. One of the streetlights at the entrance of her apartment complex was broken, casting patches of dark and light. She used to think this path was hard to walk in the dark, but now she realized that no path was harder than the one inside her mind. Returned to the States 7 years ago. Then where has he been for the past 7 years? Who has he been with? Where was he making those phone calls from? What was all that talk about bad signals, busy projects, and not being able to come back? And where did the money he asked for go? Sarah thought of the $8,000 she transferred in the 6th year. She thought of the $3,000 here, the $5,000 there, that he borrowed later under various pretexts. She thought of how she gritted her teeth and dragged herself through life all these years. Suddenly, her chest felt suffocatingly tight. It was not that she had not suffered. What she feared most was not the suffering itself, but that all her suffering over the years was nothing but a massive joke. Lily was not home yet when Sarah arrived. She put the groceries in the kitchen and stood at the sink to wash her hands. The water was freezing, but she felt nothing. She looked up and saw the family portrait hanging on the wall. It was taken before Mark left. In the photo, a chubby Lily sat between her and Mark. All 3 of them were smiling. She stared at that photo for a long time, then suddenly reached out and took the frame down. The glass had gathered a layer of dust. She wiped it, her finger stopping on Mark's face. "What exactly are you hiding from me?" she asked softly. No one in the empty room answered. At 9:30 that night, Lily came home carrying her heavy backpack. As soon as she walked in, she called out, "Mom, I am starving." Sarah immediately turned toward the kitchen. "I have not started the soup yet. I will boil some pasta for you right now." While taking off her shoes, Lily noticed something was wrong. She walked to the kitchen doorway and looked at her mother. "What is wrong? You look terrible." Sarah placed the pot on the stove and forced a smile. "Nothing. I am just a bit tired." Lily did not buy it. She dropped her backpack and walked closer. "Is it my dad again? Did he miss the payment?" Sarah's hands paused. Lily saw it and frowned. "It really is him. What did he say this time?" Sarah did not want her daughter to know, but the words were stuck in her chest like a heavy boulder. She turned around, looking at her daughter who was almost as tall as she was, and suddenly did not know how to keep lying. For years, in order to protect Mark's image in her child's heart, she had told so many lies. She said, "Dad works hard. Dad loves you. Dad is not staying away on purpose. He has no choice." But what if all of that was a lie? Lily looked at her, dropping her voice. "Mom, what is it?" Sarah stayed silent for a long time before saying, "Today at the supermarket, I ran into an old coworker of your dad's." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "And what did he say?" Sarah's throat tightened. "Your dad came back to the States 7 years ago." Lily stood completely still. The expression on her face slowly froze. The water in the pot started to form small bubbles, making a faint hissing sound. After a long moment, Lily finally asked, "What did you just say?" Sarah repeated the words. Lily's face morphed from shock to confusion, and then from confusion to pure fury. She grabbed the phone off the table. "I am calling him right now." Sarah stopped her. "I already tried. It goes to voicemail. Then I will keep calling until he answers." Lily's eyes turned red. "How dare he? How dare he lie to us? 7 years. He has been in the country for 7 years and never came home. Never came to see me? And he left you alone to work yourself to the bone?" Looking at her daughter, Sarah felt an unbearable pain in her heart. She reached out and hugged Lily. "Do not panic yet. Mom will figure this out." Lily struggled for a second but did not pull away. Finally, she buried her face in Sarah's shoulder and sobbed. "Mom, do I not have a dad anymore?" That question hurt Sarah more than any accusation. She held her daughter tighter, her tears finally spilling over. "You have me." Neither mother nor daughter slept much that night. Sarah sat in the living room, scrolling through years of chat history with Mark. The earliest messages were gone. What was left were mostly from recent years. Mark's texts were always brief. "Been busy. I will send the money next week. Do not call, the signal is terrible. I am sick, I need some cash. Wait a little longer until I get back." Every sentence felt like a little knife. The more Sarah read, the more clear-headed she became. She suddenly realized that she had actually noticed the red flags long ago. For instance, Mark always kept his calls very short and never wanted to do video calls. He claimed the internet was bad. But sometimes, she could clearly hear traffic noise in the background, people speaking with American accents. And once, something that sounded like a mall announcement. She had asked him, "Why is there an English broadcast where you are?" Mark immediately said, "Someone at the project office is playing the radio." And she believed him. Or how he always refused to give her an address, claiming the construction site moved constantly and mail would not arrive. She once bought him a winter jacket and wanted to ship it. He said he would not need it in the desert and told her not to waste money. But if he had been in the States all along, those details made perfect sense. At 2 in the morning, Sarah finally dialed David's number. She knew she should not bother someone at this hour, but she could not help it. The phone rang a few times, and David answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Hello?" Sarah said. "David, it is Sarah Evans. I am so sorry to call you this late." David woke up instantly. "Sarah, are you okay? I need to know for sure. Exactly when did Mark come back? Can you please verify it for me?" David remained silent for a moment, then said, "Let me dig through my old files tomorrow. I have some old photos and the group chat with the guys from that deployment. Do not worry, I will ask around for you." "Thank you," Sarah said. She hung up and sat on the couch until the sun came up. The next morning, David sent over a few photos. They were taken 7 years ago. The background was a private dining room at a steakhouse. Plates of food covered the table. A dozen men sat together. In the corner of the photo, Mark was wearing a white button-down shirt, smiling and raising a glass. Sarah stared at the date on the photo, her palms sweating. She remembered that exact day vividly. Lily had a 103-degree fever. In the middle of the night, Sarah carried her to the ER. She called Mark, crying, telling him their daughter's fever was dangerously high, asking if there was any way he could come back to see her. Mark had said, "Sarah, I am out of the country. I cannot go back. You have to be strong." Yet in the photo, he was clearly under the same sky, probably less than a few hundred miles away. He was drinking in a restaurant while she was pacing the hospital hallways with a sick child in her arms, with only $20 left in her wallet. Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face. David sent a voice memo next. I asked a few of the old guys. They all confirmed Mark quit shortly after returning 7 years ago. Some heard he went to work for a building materials company over in Cleveland. Others said he started his own business. I do not know the exact details. Cleveland. It was not a mystical land. It was a place she knew perfectly well. Sarah took a deep breath and texted back. Thank you. She did not want to cry anymore. Crying solved nothing. She needed the absolute truth. That afternoon, she took half the day off and went to the old office building of Apex Engineering. The company had moved long ago, leaving only a faded sign. The security guard at the front desk told her that Apex Engineering had been acquired by Summit Constructors a few years ago, and their new office was on the north side of town. Sarah took 2 buses to find the Summit Constructors building. The receptionist was very polite. After hearing her request, she searched the system for a long time and asked her to wait. 20 minutes later, an HR director named Mr. Henderson came down to speak with her. Mr. Henderson was in his 50s, wore glasses, and spoke very carefully. Mark Evans was indeed an employee of Apex Engineering. According to his file, he went overseas for a project 9 years ago and returned when the project concluded 7 years ago. He officially resigned 3 months after returning. Sarah sat in the chair, her fingers gripping her purse strap tightly. After he quit, did the company send him abroad again? Mr. Henderson shook his head. No. So all these years, when he told his family he could not come back because of an overseas company project, that was a lie? Hearing this, Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable. That would be his personal conduct. The company has no knowledge of it. Can I get a copy of his resignation record? Sarah asked. Mr. Henderson looked conflicted. That is not standard policy due to privacy rules. However, if you are legally married, you can provide the marriage certificate and formally request a partial information disclosure through the proper channels. Sarah nodded. I will prepare the documents. By the time she left the building, the sky had grown dark. She stood by the side of the road when her phone suddenly rang. Caller ID, Mark Evans. Sarah stared at his name, her heartbeat suddenly slowing down. She answered but did not speak first. On the other end, Mark's voice was the same as always, tinged with a hint of impatience. Why did you call me so many times yesterday? Did I not tell you it is crazy busy over here? Standing in the freezing wind, Sarah asked calmly, Where are you? Mark paused for a second. Where else would I be? At the project site. Which project site? Why are you asking me this? Sarah enunciated every single word. Mark, I ran into David Miller yesterday. The other end of the line went dead silent. Sarah gripped her phone tighter. He told me you came back to the States 7 years ago. Silence. A silence so long that Sarah could almost hear her own breathing. Several seconds passed before Mark let out a dry, forced laugh. David? What does he know? He probably remembered it wrong. I saw the photos, Sarah said. Photos from your welcome back dinner 7 years ago. You were sitting in a restaurant wearing a white shirt. That was the day Lily had a severe fever. I called you, and you told me you were in the Middle East and could not come back. Mark stopped talking. Sarah's voice did not rise, but it was as cold as ice. Now tell me, where exactly are you? Mark lowered his voice. Sarah, do not lose your temper. Some things are hard to explain over the phone. Let us meet up and talk. Then come home, she said. It is not convenient for me right now. Mark, Sarah cut him off. It has not been convenient for you for 7 years. If you do not give me an address by tonight, I am going to the police. I will go to your old company. I will track down everyone who knows you. I will dig this up until there is nothing left to hide. Heavy breathing came through the receiver. Mark seemed shocked that Sarah, who had always been accommodating and trusting, would speak to him like this. After a long time, he said, Do you really have to do this? Sarah let out a small laugh, her eyes stinging. You started this. Mark fell silent again, and finally gave her an address. It was in Cleveland, Ohio, less than a 3-hour drive from Dayton. Hearing this, Sarah closed her eyes. 3 hours. Not across an ocean, not across a desert, not across the remote Middle East. Just a 3-hour drive. For 9 years, she had been waiting for a man who only needed 3 hours to get home. After hanging up, Sarah stood by the road for a long time. The night wind blew past, and she suddenly felt like her entire life had been a punchline. But she knew she could not collapse. She had Lily at home, and she needed closure for the 9 years of deception. There had to be an accounting. When Sarah got home, only a small lamp was on in the living room. Lily was sitting at the dining table doing her homework, her book open, her pen hovering in midair. Seeing her mom walk in, she immediately stood up. "Mom, how did it go?" Sarah put her purse on the back of a chair and did not answer right away. She changed her shoes, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of warm water, took a few sips, and slowly said, "Your dad is in Cleveland." Lily froze. "Cleveland? Is that not incredibly close? That is like a 3-hour drive." Lily's face turned completely pale. She bit her lip, waves of anger and betrayal rising in her eyes. So all these years he did not come home. It was not because he could not. It was because he did not want to. Sarah did not deny it. Some things, even if left unspoken, were glaringly obvious to both mother and daughter. Lily suddenly slammed her pen onto the table, her voice shaking. "Why would he do this? Does he have another family out there?" Those words felt like a dagger piercing exactly through Sarah's heart. Honestly, she had thought the same thing. A man returns to the country, hides from his wife and daughter for 7 years, pretends to be overseas. What other reason could there be besides a secret life? But she did not dare jump to conclusions in front of her daughter. She was afraid Lily could not handle it. Sarah walked over, picked up Lily's pen, and placed it back neatly. She tried to keep her voice steady. "I'm going to see him tomorrow. Once I see him, we will know." "I am going too," Lily said instantly. No, Sarah refused by instinct. "Why not?" Lily stared at her with red eyes. "He is my dad too. I am one of the people he lied to." Sarah fell silent. Lily was 15. She was no longer a child who could be pacified with a simple "daddy is busy." She had the right to know the truth and the right to face it. Yet, as a mother, Sarah's instinct was to shield her child from the ugly, painful reality. She thought for a long time before speaking. "Lily, it is not that I do not want you to know. It is just that tomorrow might get really ugly. I am afraid you will get hurt." Tears fell from Lily's eyes. "Mom, were the last 9 years not ugly enough?" Sarah's heart broke. It was true. For 9 years, the two of them had endured all the loneliness and injustice a family could take. Early the next morning, Sarah called in sick to the bookstore. The owner asked if she was feeling unwell, and she just said she had a family emergency. Lily also took a day off from school. Sarah thought about convincing her to stay, but in the end, she said nothing. The mother and daughter boarded a Greyhound bus to Cleveland. The sky outside was gloomy, the trees bare. Inside the bus, it smelled of old upholstery and stale heater air. Sarah sat by the window, clutching her phone tightly. Last night, Mark had only texted an address on Oak Street, a residential area in Cleveland. He did not explain. He did not apologize. He just said, "Call me when you get here." Looking at the text, Sarah suddenly felt this man was terrifyingly alien. She remembered how, 9 years ago, he held her hand at the airport and said, "Do not be afraid. I have got you." Back then, she truly felt she had married a reliable man. Mark came from a humble background. He did not talk much, but he worked hard. They had met through mutual friends. That year, Sarah was working a retail job, and Mark had just joined the construction company. His salary was low, but he was willing to grind. On their first date, he wore a faded button-down shirt, sitting across from her, so nervous he grabbed. Sarah had not fallen in love at first sight, but she thought he was genuine. Later, he would text her every night, asking if she was off work, reminding her to wear a coat because it was getting cold. Once, Sarah worked late, and when she walked out, she found Mark standing under a streetlight holding a hot coffee and a bagel. He said, "I was worried you would be hungry." In that moment, she thought marrying a man like him would not be so bad. After marriage, life was tight. But Mark initially cared for the family. When Lily was born and cried in the middle of the night, he would get up to mix the formula. When Sarah suffered from postpartum depression, he awkwardly cooked chicken soup for her. Even though he put too much salt, she still drank it all. She could not comprehend how someone like that could turn into the person he was now. When the bus pulled into Cleveland, a light drizzle began to fall. Sarah and Lily got off and took an Uber to Oak Street. It was an older, slightly run-down neighborhood. The ground floor had a small diner, a barber shop, and a convenience store. Cars were parked haphazardly along the curb. Mark was standing outside one of the apartment buildings. When Sarah saw him from a distance, her footsteps halted. 9 years without seeing him, and he had changed drastically. The handsome young man from the photos had gained a lot of weight. His hair was thinning, and he looked visibly exhausted. He was wearing a black winter jacket, a cigarette between his fingers. Seeing the mother and daughter, he immediately put the cigarette out. Lily stood next to Sarah, her body completely rigid. Mark looked at Lily, his eyes darting away nervously. Lily is so big now. He tried to smile, but it looked incredibly forced. Lily glared at him coldly. Do you even remember how old I am? Mark's face darkened, seemingly wanting to pull rank as a father, but upon meeting Sarah's eyes, he swallowed his pride. Let us head upstairs first. It is freezing out here. Sarah did not move. We will talk right here. In front of everyone? This is ridiculous. Mark lowered his voice. Sarah, whatever it is, let us talk inside. Inside? Sarah stared at him. Whose place is it? Mark's eyes shifted away. That simple reaction gave Sarah her answer. She said, Mark, you better explain yourself right now. Why did you not come home when you returned to the States 7 years ago? Mark frowned. It is not that I did not want to. There were reasons. What reasons? He stayed silent for a moment, as if organizing his lies. When I first got back, my health was a wreck. I did not have a job lined up. After quitting the company, I wanted to get back on my feet before facing you guys. I did not want you to worry. Sarah let out a cold laugh. It took you 7 years to get back on your feet? Mark looked embarrassed. Do not talk to me like that. Things have not been easy for me either. Lily suddenly spoke up. Not easy for you? Do you think it was easy for my mom? She raised me alone, paid the mortgage, worked multiple jobs, and could not even take a day off when she was sick. You have been back for 7 years and never even bothered to look at us once. And you say it has not been easy for you? Mark looked at his daughter, a flash of irritation in his eyes. Adults are talking, kids should stay out of it. Lily's eyes welled with angry tears. I am not a kid anymore. I was a kid when you started lying to me. But I am not anymore. Sarah grabbed her daughter's hand to calm her, then locked eyes with Mark. Do you have another family here? Mark's face instantly turned dreadful. He did not immediately deny it. That silence said everything. Sarah's chest physically ached, but she did not cry. She just found it deeply pathetic. For 9 years, she had made countless excuses for this man. He was working hard. He had no choice. He was trapped. He wanted to come home but could not. In the end, the simplest and cruelest answer was standing right in front of her. He just betrayed them. Right at that moment, a woman walked out of the building entrance. She was in her 30s, wearing a beige cardigan, holding a 4- or 5-year-old boy in her arms. The boy was holding a toy truck, babbling about something. Seeing Mark, then seeing Sarah and Lily, the woman stopped in her tracks. Her expression shifted from confusion to pure guard. Mark, who are they? Sarah felt Lily's hand violently flinch. Mark turned pale. Take the kid upstairs first. The woman did not budge. Who are they? The little boy looked up and called out in his sweet toddler voice. Daddy! That word felt like a brutal slap across Lily's face. Lily stood paralyzed, tears instantly pouring down her cheeks. At 15 years old, in a strange city, she finally witnessed her father living a life with another child. So all these years, when he said Daddy is busy on the phone, he was busy watching someone else grow up. Sarah took a deep breath and looked at the woman. I am Sarah Evans, Mark's wife, and this is his daughter, Lily. The woman's face completely drained of color. She clutched the child tightly, staring at Mark in disbelief. Wife? Did you not tell me you were divorced? Mark panicked. Rachel, do not listen to her nonsense. That is not how it is. The woman named Rachel trembled as she spoke. Then how is it? You told me your ex-wife ran off with another man years ago. You said your daughter hated you and cut contact. You told me you were completely alone for years. Mark could not keep talking. His face shifted between red and pale. Listening to this, Sarah actually felt a strange sense of calm. So she was not the only one being played. This woman named Rachel was also living inside a completely different web of lies spun by Mark. Mark started to panic. Stop fighting out here. Let us go upstairs and talk, please. Sarah looked at him. What are you afraid of? Afraid the neighbors will hear? Afraid your new life will become a joke? Mark suppressed his anger. Sarah, I admit I made mistakes, but you do not have to make a huge scene out of this, do you? Make a scene? Sarah laughed. Mark, you made me a living widow for 9 years. You made your child fatherless for 9 years. You returned to the States 7 years ago and pretended to be in the Middle East. You scammed me out of my money while raising a whole different family over here, and now you say I am making a scene? Neighbors were already stopping to watch the drama. Mark's expression grew uglier by the second. Rachel held her crying child, her own eyes turning red. She looked at Sarah and asked softly, Are you guys really still married? Sarah pulled a copy of their marriage certificate out of her purse. She had specifically dug it out the night before. She handed it to Rachel. See for yourself. Rachel's hands shook as she read it. She turned to Mark. You lied to me. Mark frantically scratched his head. I was backed into a corner. What corner? Sarah demanded. Tell us. Mark remained silent for a long time, as if he finally broke under the pressure. He muttered, When I came back, I was too scared to go home. Too scared. Lily choked back a sob. Scared of what? Mark kept his eyes on the ground. During those years abroad, I saved up some cash and met some guys. Someone roped me into a building supplies business. Said it was a guaranteed win. I threw all my savings into it and even took out loans. But it was a scam. I went into massive debt. I was afraid of dragging you guys down if I went back. Sarah stared at him coldly. So you just abandoned us? I originally wanted to wait until I paid off the debt before going back. Mark's voice grew quieter. But the debt kept piling up. I was too ashamed to face you. At the time, I was looking for work in Cleveland and met Rachel. Her family runs a small business and they helped me out a lot. I was afraid. I will finish it for you, Sarah cut him off. You figured you had people helping you here and a shiny new life, so you just threw your old family in the trash. Mark panicked. No, you guys were always in my heart. Did I not still send you money? Lily let out a dark laugh, though her tears kept falling. The tiny bit of money you sent? Sometimes it was once every 3 months. And you asked my mom for money. You said you were sick? You said the project needed cash. You said you would pay her back when you returned. Where did that money go? Mark opened his mouth but said nothing. Rachel also looked at him. You took money from them too? A flash of absolute humiliation crossed Mark's face. I really needed the cash back then. Sarah asked. For what? To pay your debts or to fund this new family? Mark did not answer. The answer did not matter anymore. Looking at him like this, Sarah suddenly lost all desire to interrogate the details. Once a person decides to lie, they can spin any excuse into a tragic necessity. Any betrayal can be packaged as a hardship. But the people who were hurt have no obligation to understand. The rain started coming down harder. The child in Rachel's arms was scared and started crying for Daddy. Mark instinctively reached out to hold the boy. Seeing this, Lily took a massive step back. Sarah's heart broke, and she stepped in front of her daughter. She turned to Mark and said, Let us find a lawyer. We are getting a divorce. Mark froze. Divorce? What else? Sarah looked at him. Do you want to keep lying? Mark's face shifted drastically. Sarah, please calm down. A divorce is a big deal. We have been married for so long. Married? Sarah cut him off calmly. Marriage means supporting each other. It does not mean you hide away while I guard an empty shell for you. Mark, from the day you returned 7 years ago and refused to come home, our marriage was already over. Mark was left speechless. But when it actually came down to the divorce settlement, he revealed another side of himself. He refused to go to a mediator and refused to sign any agreement. He claimed he had no money, no property, and a child to raise. He said it was impossible to offer Sarah alimony, let alone back pay for the years of child support he owed Lily. I am broke too, he complained. You guys cannot push me off a cliff. Hearing this, Sarah felt only a bone-deep chill. Back then, when she was alone with a feverish Lily waiting in line at the ER, he never asked if she was being pushed off a cliff. When she worked 2 jobs to pay the mortgage, he never asked if she was being pushed off a cliff. When Lily was mocked by kids at school for not having a dad, he never cared. Now that it was his turn to take responsibility, his first response was, You cannot push me. Sarah stopped arguing with him. She took Lily and left Cleveland. On the Greyhound ride back, Lily did not say a word. She leaned against the window, her eyes swollen, looking as if her soul had been drained. Sarah knew this day had been incredibly cruel for her daughter. She gently took Lily's hand. If it hurts, just cry. Lily shook her head. After a long time, she said in a raspy voice, Mom, I used to think, when he came back, should I give him the silent treatment for a few days to show him I was mad? But honestly, I knew if he just said one nice thing to me, I would probably forgive him immediately. Sarah's eyes stung. Lily continued, I even secretly imagined that on the day he came back, we would all go out for burgers. He would buy me a new backpack. He would go to my parent-teacher conferences. Looking back, I was so stupid. You are not stupid, Sarah said. A child missing their father is never stupid. Lily turned to look at her. What about you, Mom? Were you waiting the whole time too? Sarah looked out at the dreary highway. Softly, she said, I waited. But later on, I got too tired to even admit I was still waiting. The mother and daughter leaned against each other in silence. When they got home that night, Sarah did not cook. They made a box of mac and cheese. Lily took a few bites and could not eat anymore. Lily took a few bites and could not eat anymore. Sarah had no appetite either. But the next day, they both woke up as usual. Life does not pause just because the truth is revealed. Lily went back to high school, and Sarah went back to the bookstore. Only, Sarah no longer buried everything inside. Her first step was consulting a divorce attorney. After hearing the whole story, the lawyer told her, Mark's long-term disappearance, hiding his return, and living with someone else was severe marital misconduct. If he refused an uncontested divorce, she could file a lawsuit. As for child support, the division of marital debt, and the money he scammed from her, all of it could be claimed if she gathered the right evidence. Sarah wrote it all down in a notebook. The lawyer warned her, your biggest priority right now is a paper trail. Text histories, bank statements, employment records, witness testimonies. Make sure you save any recordings where he admits to returning and starting a new family. Sarah nodded. Walking out of the law office, for the first time, she felt she was not just a victim meant to cry, wait, and endure. She could take action. She could fight for justice for herself and her daughter. Over the next few months, Sarah transformed. She submitted a formal request to Summit Constructors for Mark's employment records. Mr. Henderson, though unable to provide the full file, gave her an official letter confirming Mark had ended his overseas project 7 years ago and resigned that same year. David Miller also agreed to testify, providing the photos from the welcome back dinner and old group chat records. Sarah printed out her bank statements, highlighting every single transfer and mapping it to the dates and excuses Mark used to ask for cash. Going through those texts still hurt, but the pain no longer paralyzed her. Initially, Mark called to beg her. Sarah, I know I messed up. Please do not take this to court. The kids are growing up. A messy lawsuit looks bad for everyone. Sarah asked him, when you say the kids, do you mean Lily or your son? The line went silent. Sarah said, Mark, you are not worried about looking bad for the kids, you are worried about looking bad for yourself. Later, Mark changed his tune and started attacking her. Do not act so high and mighty. You just want my money. I am broke right now. Suing me will not get you a dime. Sarah just calmly replied, let the judge decide that. Eventually, she stopped answering his calls altogether. She no longer needed his cooperation. After filing the lawsuit, during the months waiting for the trial, Sarah's life actually found a sense of peace. She stopped staring at her phone. She stopped waiting for a man who was never going to come home. She took down the old family portrait and replaced it with a picture from Lily's middle school graduation. In the photo, Lily wore her gown, smiling brightly. At first, Lily became withdrawn, and her grades slipped. Her homeroom teacher called Sarah, politely asking if there was trouble at home. Sarah asked the teacher to keep an eye on Lily, and she no longer used the excuse that Dad is working out of state. She told the teacher honestly, her father's situation has been a massive blow to her. I am helping her work through it. At night, when Lily spaced out while doing homework, Sarah would sit next to her. Even if Sarah was just reading a book in silence, she wanted Lily to know the house was not empty. One day, Lily suddenly asked, Mom, if he comes begging for my forgiveness, what should I do? Sarah thought about it. You can choose not to forgive him, or you can forgive him someday in the future. That is your right, not his demand. When someone does something terrible, they cannot just play the I am your dad card and force you to let it go. Lily looked down, thinking for a long time. Right now, I do not want to forgive him. Then do not. Does that make me a bad person? Sarah stroked her hair. No. A hurt person who refuses to immediately forgive is never a bad person. Lily finally broke down. This time, she cried even harder than she did in Cleveland. Sarah held her, letting her pour out years of suppressed grief. Some wounds can only start healing once you finally admit how much they hurt. The day of the court hearing arrived. Mark showed up wearing a dark jacket, looking even more haggard than the last time. Rachel was nowhere to be seen. Sarah did not know what happened to them, and she did not care. In court, Mark admitted to returning to the States 7 years ago but tried to frame it as a mental breakdown caused by financial ruin, claiming he was too ashamed to face his family. He denied intentionally scamming Sarah, insisting the money she sent was normal spousal support. Sarah's attorney presented the text logs. The records showed Mark repeatedly asking for cash by claiming the overseas project was stalled, that he was sick in the Middle East, or that he needed money for international flights and visa fees. The reality was, he was in Ohio the entire time. Faced with the evidence, Mark lowered his head. David testified that Mark had returned and quit his job years ago. The documents from Summit Constructors were entered into evidence. The judge asked Mark, after returning to the United States, did you ever proactively visit your wife and daughter? Mark mumbled, no. Did you inform your wife of your return? No. Did you cohabitate with another individual and father a child while still legally married? Mark stayed silent for a long time before finally saying, yes. Sitting nearby, Sarah felt surprisingly calm. Maybe because she had waited for this moment for so long. The truth was finally laid bare under the fluorescent lights of a courtroom. No more guessing. No more listening to his pathetic lies. The judge granted the divorce. Sarah was awarded sole custody of Lily. Mark was ordered to pay monthly child support, plus back pay for the years he abandoned his financial obligations. As for the money he obtained from Sarah under false pretenses, the court ordered him to pay restitution. On the day the final decree was issued, Sarah stood outside the courthouse holding the papers for a long time. The sky was bright blue, the wind was mild. She suddenly thought of the day at the airport 9 years ago, holding Lily, watching Mark walk away. Back then, she thought she was waiting for a husband to come home. Now she knew she had just been waiting for a lie to end. Mark chased after her. "Sarah!" Sarah stopped, but did not turn around. He walked up behind her, his voice hoarse. "I am sorry." That apology was years too late. Sarah turned to look at him. She had imagined a million times what she would do if Mark ever came back. She thought she would scream, curse, beat her fists against his chest. She even thought she might go soft if he just said sorry. But now that the day was here, all she felt was exhaustion. "Mark, the person you need to apologize to the most is not me," she said. "It is Lily." Mark looked down. "I will find her and talk to her." "Do not hold your breath," Sarah said calmly. "Whether she wants to see you is entirely up to her. Do not ever try to use your title as a father to pressure her." Mark's lips trembled. "I know." Sarah looked at this man who had once shared her bed and her life. The last bit of heaviness in her heart completely dissolved. Pay what the court ordered, and do not ever lie to her again. With that, she turned and walked away. This time, she was the one leaving him behind. When Sarah got home, Lily was waiting in the living room. Sarah told her daughter the verdict. Lily did not react drastically. She just asked, "Does this mean we really have nothing to do with him anymore?" "Legally, he is still your father and he has to pay child support," Sarah said. "But our lives will never revolve around him again." Lily nodded. After a moment, she walked over and hugged Sarah. "Mom, I am going to study hard. When I grow up, it will be my turn to take care of you." Tears immediately flooded Sarah's eyes, but she smiled. "You take care of yourself first. Mom will take care of herself too." Their first Thanksgiving after the divorce was quieter than usual, but no longer suffocating. Sarah bought new curtains and deep cleaned the living room. She and Lily roasted a small turkey together. It came out a bit dry, and the carving was a mess. Lily laughed so hard she could barely stand, and Sarah laughed with her. For years, she had felt that the holidays were ruined because someone was missing. Now she understood that a complete home is not about the head count. It is about honesty and peace. As long as the people inside have each other's backs, even a table for two can be a feast. After dinner, Lily received a text from an unsaved number. "It is Dad." "I am so sorry, Lily. Happy Thanksgiving." Lily stared at it for a long time and did not reply. Sarah did not push her. After a few minutes, Lily set the phone face down. "Mom, I do not want to text him back right now." "Then do not. And maybe I never will." "That is okay too." Lily leaned back on the couch, watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade on the TV, and said softly, "I used to think it was so embarrassing not to have a dad around. Now I know it was not my fault." Sarah's nose stung. "Of course it was not your fault." Lily turned to look at her. "It was not your fault either." Sarah froze. Those words felt like a beam of light striking the darkest corner of her soul. Deep down, she had been secretly blaming herself all these years. She blamed herself for not noticing the signs sooner. She blamed herself for trusting Mark too much. She blamed herself for letting her daughter grow up inside a lie, but Lily said it was not her fault. Sarah wiped her eyes and nodded. "You are right. It was not our fault." After the holidays, life moved steadily forward. At first, Mark paid the child support on time. Later, when he started missing payments, Sarah simply filed a motion for wage garnishment. She no longer argued with him or let his pity parties manipulate her. She focused all her energy on herself and her daughter. The owner of the bookstore noticed Sarah's hard work and promoted her to handle inventory and bookkeeping. With the pay raise, Sarah spent her evenings learning Excel and how to manage an online storefront. She used to think she was too old to learn new tech. But once she started, she realized that not knowing is not scary. What is scary is being too afraid to start. Lily's mental state also improved. Leading up to high school finals, she studied fiercely, staying up until 11 every night. Sarah would make her a mug of hot chocolate and help her organize her study notes. Occasionally, they would bicker. Lily would complain that her mom was nagging, and Sarah would scold Lily for staying up too late. But soon after, Lily would poke her head out of her room and say, "Mom, sorry for snapping. And Sarah would reply, I was a bit tense too. Then they would laugh. They were both learning how to live well, learning not to let past trauma poison their relationship. When the semester ended, Lily brought home a stellar report card. Sarah cooked a huge feast to celebrate. Over dinner, Lily suddenly said, Mom, I want to change my name. Sarah was a bit surprised. Why? I love the name Lily. Lily said, I do not want his last name anymore. Sarah fell silent. She knew this was not just a teenage tantrum. It was her daughter's way of burying the past. Are you sure? Lily nodded. I am sure. I want your last name. I want to be Lily Davis. Sarah nearly cried. She said, If you still want to do it when you turn 18, Mom will go with you to the courthouse. But there is no rush right now, okay? Lily thought about it and nodded. Okay. That fall, Lily started her sophomore year. Sarah dropped her off at the high school. Watching her daughter wearing her favorite hoodie, carrying a new backpack, looking sharp and confident among the crowd of teenagers, Sarah suddenly remembered the little toddler crying on her shoulder at the airport. Time does not erase all wounds, but it gives people the chance to stand back up. Lily turned around and waved. Mom, I am going in. Sarah smiled and waved back. Eat a good lunch. Stop buying junk food. I know. Lily jogged through the school doors and vanished into the crowd. Sarah stood there, watching her go, feeling an indescribable sense of grounding. She knew her daughter's life would not be derailed by the absence of a father. Lily would face sadness and disappointment, but she would also grow up, make new friends, chase new dreams, and find her own strength. As for Sarah herself, she was no longer just Mark Evans's abandoned wife. She was Sarah Davis, a mother, a woman, someone who was deceived but absolutely refused to be destroyed. A few years later, Sarah left the bookstore and partnered with the owner to open a small independent cafe and bookstore near the local high school. The storefront was cozy, selling used books, coffee, and pastries. She was busy every day, and though she was not rich, she had more hope than ever before. Sometimes parents buying supplies would chat with her and ask, Where does your husband work? In the past, that question would induce a panic attack, and Sarah would lie and say he worked out of state. Now, she simply said, We are divorced. It is just me and my daughter. Some people looked awkward, some looked sympathetic, and some would say, It must be tough raising a kid alone. Sarah would just smile. It was, but it gets better. She did not broadcast her story to everyone, nor did she need anyone's sympathy to prove she did nothing wrong. She simply lived her life, day by day. One evening, Lily, home for the weekend from college, was sitting in front of the shop helping Sarah organize inventory. The setting sun hit the shelves, casting a soft golden glow over rows of binders and pens. Lily had grown into a bright, independent young woman, decisive in her words and actions. She straightened a stack of notebooks and suddenly said, Mom, he called me today. Sarah's hands paused. Did you answer? I did, Lily said. He said he wants to see me. What do you think? Lily looked down, sliding a notebook into a plastic bag. Her voice was perfectly calm. I told him we will talk when I am ready. Maybe one day I will see him. Maybe I never will. But I do not want to spend my life carrying around hate. It is too exhausting. Sarah looked at her daughter, feeling a mix of immense pride and slight sorrow. I am so glad you feel that way. But remember, whatever you decide, never force yourself. Lily smiled. I know. She paused, then added, Honestly, Mom, back when I hated him the most, I was terrified I would turn into a bitter person. But I realized something. Not forgiving him does not mean I have to actively hate him. I can just put him in a box far, far away, where he can never affect my life again. Sarah nodded gently. That is a great way to live. The evening breeze blew down the street, making the bell above the shop door chime. Lily looked at her mother and suddenly said, Mom, thank you. Sarah smiled. Thank me for what? Thank you for not collapsing, Lily said. If you had fallen apart back then, I probably would not have survived it either. Sarah's eyes grew hot, but she joked, Then you better help me carry these boxes to the back. Lily laughed. Deal. I will carry boxes for you for the rest of my life. The mother and daughter kept organizing the shop, laughing. The sky darkened and the streetlights flickered on. High schoolers walked past in small groups. A few came in to buy pens, while others asked how much it cost to print a paper. Sarah expertly rang up the customers while Lily handed back the change. Life is exactly like this. It does not completely collapse just because someone walks out, nor does it stay permanently frozen in the wreckage of trauma. The years they were lied to were undeniably real. Sarah had stayed up countless nights waiting for a phone call. She had cried in hospital waiting rooms, She had wired her last dollar to a man she thought was suffering in a desert across the world. Lily had stared enviously at other kids with their dads. She had waited by her birthday cake for a call that never came. Those injustices could not be erased with a simple let it go. But Sarah and Lily did not let the injustice swallow them whole. They dug up the truth, ripped open the lies, and dragged the justice they were owed out into the light. And then, they went back to making dinner, going to school, running a shop, celebrating holidays, and leaning on each other in the quiet, ordinary days. Years later, Sarah would sometimes think back to that evening in the supermarket. If she had not run into David Miller, maybe she would have lived inside the lie forever. She would have kept starving herself to save money, kept making excuses for Mark, and kept telling her daughter that Daddy was just too busy. But life has no what-ifs. When fate shoved the ugly truth in her face, she was in so much agony she could barely stand. She thought her entire world had collapsed. Only later did she realize that the world had not collapsed, only a fake house built entirely out of lies had fallen. A real home is never maintained by deception. A real home was her and Lily sitting across from each other at the dinner table eating hot pasta. It was her daughter coming home from track practice yelling, "Mom, I am starving." It was the two of them apologizing after an argument. It was knowing that no matter what happened outside, there was someone waiting for you when you opened the door. That was the clarity she earned from 9 years of suffering. Later on, a young woman came into the shop to buy a planner. She was holding a baby, her eyes red and puffy. While making small talk, she told Sarah that her husband worked out of state and rarely came home, and his calls were getting fewer by the day. She asked if she should demand the truth. Sarah did not judge. She just placed the planner in a bag and said gently, "If you have doubts, go verify them. A marriage can survive hardship, but it cannot survive long-term deception. Do not be afraid of the truth. No matter how much the truth hurts, it is always better than living your whole life as a fool." The young woman froze for a second, then nodded. Sarah watched her leave, her heart completely at peace. She no longer blamed the heavens or saw herself as the tragic abandoned wife. She only hoped that people like her would become fewer and fewer. She hoped that everyone who poured their heart into a marriage would be cherished. And if they could not be cherished, she hoped they had the courage to walk away. Late that night, it was time to close the shop. Sarah pulled down the metal security gate. Lily stood on the sidewalk with her backpack waiting. "Let us go home, Mom," Lily said. Sarah locked the padlock, looking up at the night sky. The city lights were too bright to see many stars, but the breeze was gentle. She smiled. "Let us go home." The mother and daughter walked shoulder to shoulder down the sidewalk. The road ahead was not particularly wide, and it might not always be smooth. But they knew one thing for certain. From now on, they never had to wait for someone who was never coming back. They could build a home entirely on their own. The story concludes here. The night breeze slips quietly through the window. I am Arthur. Sarah's story leaves a heavy, aching feeling in my chest. She waited for 9 years, believing her husband was enduring the harsh elements in the Middle East. She pinched pennies to hold down the fort, only to find out he had returned to the States 7 years ago, living just a 3-hour drive away, raising a completely different family. The word daddy was no longer meant for her daughter, but for someone else's child. A chance encounter in a supermarket. A single sentence. He came back 7 years ago, struck like lightning, shattering her 9-year delusion. But she did not just break down and scream. She took her daughter on a Greyhound bus to find the truth, watching the man she loved hold another woman's child. What moved me the most wasn't the final court verdict. It was what 15-year-old Lily said after the trial. "I used to think it was so embarrassing not to have a dad around. Now I know it was not my fault." A teenager used those words to finally set herself free. And Sarah, she went from being Mark's abandoned wife to being Sarah Davis. She opened a shop and built a warm, thriving life with her daughter. Later, she advised another confused woman. No matter how much the truth hurts, it is always better than living your whole life as a fool. That is the clarity she paid for with 9 years of her life. I want to ask all of you watching or reading this. If you found out your partner used an overseas job to lie to you for 7 years, would you calmly gather evidence and start over like Sarah? Or would you completely break down? Share your thoughts or your own stories in the comments. Remember, a real home is never built on lies. If someone refuses to come home, build your own home without them. See you next time. Good night.